revamp Revelations of an Autism Mom Professional. I'm Tabitha, your 24-hour online personal parent support professional, and I am here for you. Now, today I'm going to be answering your questions, the questions that you all have been sending me to my direct message account. I'm going to be answering those questions today. The messages are starting to really pile up, so I want to make sure I start answering those questions now. You want to see if your question was answered? Let's go. Answering your questions. Now, before we get started, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. That's the only way I will know that you enjoy my videos. And make sure you hit the post notification bell so that you will also know when I drop a brand new video on YouTube. So take a moment to do that, okay? Alrighty now. So we are going to answer some questions today. And first, I want to start by thanking you guys for all of the questions that you guys sent me in my direct messages on social media. I'm really overwhelmed because there's so many of the questions. I can't answer all of them today, but I did pick 10, and I want to at least try to get to those 10 questions so I can start getting these questions answered for you guys. Because again, this channel is for who? You got it. It's for you. So our first question comes from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And it reads, my child has autism with behavior. I read that kids with behavior problems have a lot of toxins built up in their system and should be taking activated charcoal. What are your thoughts about this? Okay, Tulsa, Oklahoma. So my thoughts about activated charcoal. First of all, before we give our child anything or even entertain the idea of giving our child anything, we want to know what it is we're giving and where does it come from, okay? And then what's the purpose and what's the function? How does it work? All right, so with activated charcoal, basically it is a combination of things. It's burnt wood, bamboo, and other substances that are burnt to a powdery charcoal, and that powder is capsulized and put in, forms where you can just kind of powder form, where you can dip it into whatever. And this activated charcoal is used to absorb any bad substances like toxins or poisons. So, for example, if someone takes an overdose of medication, or if a child drinks a poisonous product, chemical, and they're rushed to the emergency room, one of the go-to products will usually be activated charcoal because the function is to absorb that poison. So activated charcoal will absorb poisons and chemicals that are taken in either intentionally or accidentally. And again, the function is really to prevent the toxin or poison from damaging the body, which can be deadly. Now, should it be given to children with autism and behavioral challenges who are suspected to have toxins in their body? Well, the thing about it is we don't know whether these toxins really exist. I mean, that's just something that's experimental because, we just are assuming. We cannot see the toxins that we're trying to treat. Now, with medications, an overdose, or with a chemical that was ingested, that's a different situation because we know exactly what it is that was taken in. Whereas a child who has behavior problems, because they're acting out, it doesn't necessarily mean they have toxins. It could be a lot of different things. It could be frustration from, not being able to communicate. It could be a lot of things. But to say that the child has toxins, we don't necessarily 100% know that, but I do totally get what you're saying because, this has been something that I have researched myself in the past. Now, with activated charcoal and children, you have to be careful. Definitely under the age of 1, it's a no-go, okay? Never, okay? And even over the age of 1, you always, number 1, you want to consult with your pediatrician or your primary care doctor to make sure that this is okay. Now, there's a disclaimer with this video because, I'm not giving advice. I'm not telling you to try it. I'm just answering these questions because they're fair questions. They are fair questions. And activated charcoal has, yes, been used for suspected toxins. But again, we cannot say 100% for sure that these toxins are there. Now, what are the side effects? Well, one of the side effects is allergies. I mean, anyone can have an allergy to anything, you know? Activated charcoal, yeah, it's just charcoal, but can a person have an allergy to it? Absolutely. I mean, this is medicine, you know? There is no 100% anything in medicine. So yeah, a person can have an allergy, itching or rash, or, you know, maybe even respiratory issues, who knows? But, you know, you want to tread lightly, especially with something that you've never tried before. Secondly, constipation is a big issue with charcoal. Constipation is truly a big issue, and anytime a person takes activated charcoal, you definitely want to drink lots and lots and lots of water. Drink, because you need to push that toxin out of the body. I mean, the whole purpose of even using the activated charcoal is to absorb the toxin, but it doesn't help if it's just sitting there in your gut and in your GI tract and not moving anywhere. So you want to push it out. You got to get it through your system and get it out. Otherwise, those toxins will just kind of just still be there, you know? And constipation is the issue. So sometimes people do need a stool softener, something mild. Again, that's definitely something you want to consult with your doctor about. Now, the problem with activated charcoal in general, it's not one of those things you just take just all willy-nilly, you know? Activated charcoal, again, absorbs. So if you or your child are on any medications, that's huge, because there are certain hours, or depending on the time the medications are given, and then you take this charcoal, you know, the medications will they'll be absorbed and they won't even function. Because, you know, if you have a child who has behavior and they're on medications for their behavior, and you give them activated charcoal and it absorbs that medication that you have given for the behavior, basically they're not getting any effect from their medication at all. So, you know, it can actually kind of work against the whole scenario of you're trying to treat the behavior with activated charcoal. So, no, we don't know whether there are toxins there. Has it been used? Absolutely. Activated charcoal has been used. I've used it for my son at one point when he was not on any medications. I did make sure he had a stool softener. I made sure that he drank. Did I see a difference with it? I can't say 100%, because there was so many things going on at that time. And, you know, I was trying to do so many different things at that time where I'm not sure what one thing actually made the difference. But it's one of those things you definitely want to check with your primary care doctor, pediatrician. Children under the age of 1, do not give it to them. And if you're experimenting, I would not experiment. I would definitely talk to your healthcare provider, because there may be some concerns about activated charcoal with your specific child. So yes, can people use it? They absolutely have. I have used it in the past for myself and for my child. However, at the time, my child was not on any medications. And also, I did definitely consult with my child's pediatrician, who, you know, said, okay, you can try it. But that was my child. Okay, so that's the deal with activated charcoal. So our next question comes from Tampa, Florida. And this one reads, I heard probiotics were good for children with autism. There's so many different kinds out there. How do I decide which probiotic to give? And how do I know which one is actually working? Okay, so probiotics, this is a great question, because this question comes technically side by side with activated charcoal. And the reason I say that is because probiotics, again, we want to know what it is and what are we doing when we give it to our child and what's the function. Well, probiotics are live organisms, okay? So what do these live organisms do? Well, they're good bacteria. It's a combination of good bacteria. And the body inside of our gastrointestinal tract has bacteria, but it has good bacteria and it has bad bacteria. So the purpose of the probiotic is to get rid of all of the bad bacteria and introduce the good bacteria. So we want our GI tracts to be perfectly aligned with good bacteria. Now, is that possible? Well, yeah, it is possible if you're eating healthy and you're not taking in junk or things that will cause like bad bacteria. But probiotics, they are confusing because there's like a billion of this and a billion of that and 400 billion organisms. And it's like, well, what do you take? You know, there's so many and there's these weird names. But the thing about probiotics you have to remember is this. The number one thing, if you don't remember anything I tell you, if you give your child a probiotic, or if you're taking a probiotic, you want to make sure that child is drinking a lot of water. I can't even express this enough, and I will tell you from personal experience. I did give my child a probiotic, and he was taking it twice a day as recommended, and he wasn't really drinking that much, and the behavior, oh my God, it got so bad. I was like, what is wrong with him? I mean, oh my gosh. But the problem was you can have what they call die-off symptoms. Now, die-off symptoms is when you give a probiotic and it's killing off the bad bacteria and introducing the good bacteria. But if you're not going to the bathroom and excreting the bad bacteria out of the system, it's just like loose bad bacteria in the body. And it can affect thinking and it can affect behavior, and it just makes you like all over the place. So drinking a lot of water with probiotics is the number one thing, because it can cause headaches. You know, having all of this bad bacteria floating around in the body can actually cause kids to have headaches, or adults to have headaches. So that's one of the main complaints. So the key to resolving that problem is to make sure that there is a lot of fluid intake. Just drink, push that bad bacteria out of the gastrointestinal tract, and to keep it moving, okay? And as you're continuing to use the probiotics and it's lining the bacteria with the good bacteria in the GI system, you'll notice a change. You'll notice that you're feeling better, you know, you're thinking more clearly. I mean, a lot of people have, you know, had great results with probiotics. Now, probiotics are also, they're cultured, they're found in yogurts. There's a lot of different ways to get probiotics. They have liquids, they have pill form, they have the yogurt through natural foods. Now, there are some people who do not do well with dairy. So some of these probiotics you have to be careful with because they do have some dairy. And you want to kind of really read up on those because, you know, you want to make sure that you're not introducing something that's going to cause like some intolerance. You know, I mean, you can definitely have some side effects from probiotics. Again, if you're not drinking a lot of water, for the most part, I mean, they're relatively safe. But getting something that has like a billion microorganisms or organisms, you know, billions, may be too much. So you may have to start off with a lower number because, you know, a lot of times people think, well, more is better. Well, yeah, more can be better, but your body has to be able to tolerate these probiotics because, there are so many different kinds, and they do have multiple strengths that range from like very little to like mega. And I wouldn't go mega to start, you know, because that's something that's going to like, you know, if your body's not used to it, you want to kind of get your body built up. So one of the things that I did with my child, when probiotics was recommended, was I opened the capsule and I gave like a half of the capsule and put it in like, you know, some Jell-O or something like that, because I wanted to make sure that he didn't get the whole thing, because too much of it may have caused him to have some type of, you know, reaction, like behaviorally. So I wanted to first see how he tolerated it. And I did that for about a week. Then I added a little bit more, and then eventually he got a capsule. And I just kind of gradually increased it, making sure that he was drinking a lot of water. And that's what I did. Now, how did I choose the probiotic? That was by going through trial and error. Also reading the ingredients. So my goal with any product that I'm going to use is to make sure that the product has the least amount of additives in it. So if I saw a product that had like 15, 20 additives to it, unnecessary stuff. You know, I just didn't even go there with it because I'm like, oh, that's just too much extras. This is not the actual probiotic itself, the ingredients from the organisms. These are extra things that are added to the probiotic. So I try to stay away from anything that's extra. You know, I try to stick with just the source, the capsule, whatever the capsule is made of, and keep it to a minimum, because all the extra additives can add extra problems, and we really don't know if that's the problem. So keeping it to a minimum is better. Just keep it simple. So I can tell you the product that I used and I particularly liked, but again, this is something that you would have to really talk with your doctor about, and you also want to just kind of do some research on them. I used a product called Enzymedica, okay, Enzymedica. And I can't remember the name of it. I just know that that's the name of the company, but it's called Enzymedica, and they make a probiotic, and it had the least amount of extra stuff in it, you know, so that's the route that I went with that. And I would give it to my son as directed, and I did notice a difference in his behavior. He seemed to be more calm at times, but then because of his, you know, autism, it just really fluctuated so much that I can't say 100%, oh my God, that was the answer, the probiotic. But I tried to always make sure that he was on a probiotic. And when I introduced any probiotic, I always introduced it gradually. Now, my son does have a allergy to lactose or dairy, so I really did try to keep it to a minimum when it came to anything extra, and also making sure I did the research to avoid anything that may contain any dairy. So this one had no dairy, no soy, no gluten, none of that stuff. So it was a great product. But again, check with your doctor about that. But yes, probiotics are definitely good. Again, they do add good bacteria to your system, and get rid of the bad bacteria, but you do have to get that bad bacteria out of your system. One other thing about probiotics I want to mention is this. You don't want to do probiotics if you're on antibiotics, okay? Now, antibiotics typically just kind of mess up our system. You know, it just can. But they're needed at times. Like if there's an ear infection or something like that, you do have to take it. But it kind of gets rid of all the bad bacteria. I mean, the good bacteria, the bad bacteria, it just kind of just destroys the whole everything. So adding a probiotic to the body after, some days after taking a antibiotic is the best route, because you are not going to be destroying. If you're going against the grain, if you're taking a probiotic and then you're taking antibiotics, so it's just not doing anything. But if you wait a few days after the antibiotic dosage is over and then you start the probiotic, then you will be starting off fresh, adding good bacteria to the system, and you know, you can work from there. Okay, so that is the deal with probiotics. So definitely do your research, read up on it, and you know, if you have any questions about it, just, you know, hit me up. So if I had to choose between a probiotic and activated charcoal, I would definitely go with probiotic, because, you know, a probiotic is actually going to get rid of the bad bacteria, which if you don't get rid of it, really, that's your toxins that you're talking about. Do you have them? Well, we don't know, but at least we know the probiotic will, you know, adjust that. Whereas again, with activated charcoal, we're just like experimenting. We don't really know, and we're not even getting to the source of the problem. The likelihood is, if you're not on a probiotic, there is definitely some bad bacteria there. Yeah, so that's just pretty much how it works. Now, with autism, it just can be exacerbated because, you know, autistic children, they are very sensitive, their systems are sensitive, and they're just made a little differently, that's all. But for the most part, we need to be sensitive to that as well as parents. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Tampa. So our next question is from, I don't know where it's from. Actually, this one did not get a response. I usually send a message back asking, you know, where are you from, so I can mention it in my video, but I didn't get a response to this one. But the question reads, Tabitha, thank you for your videos. I love your channel. You're welcome. I hope you subscribed. My daughter is 2.5 and not saying any words. I'm afraid she may be autistic. I don't think I can handle the diagnosis. Okay, that's the end of it. I understand. I totally get it. Your child is 2.5. You want to act now. I cannot stress this enough. Okay, this is major. And I am hoping that the person who sent me this question responds. And I will definitely send you a inbox to let you know that this video does have the answer to your question. This is major. Your child is 2.5 years old and has a chance to get ahead now. Now, does the child have autism? Well, we don't know. There are certain things that need to be done, and they need to be done like now. I mean, now, right now. This is a very critical age. I cannot express to you how critical it is. Please, if you have not yet checked out my first video, and I think it was my third video, please check it out, because those 2 videos will tell you that this is the most crucial time that you do something for your child. Getting your child tested officially for autism is not a definite at this age, because again, autism is not officially diagnosed until the age of 6. Now, at the age of 2.5, there can be a diagnosis of pervasive developmental disorder, okay, the PDD, but it's not confirmed technically until the age of 6, because the age of 2, or between 2 and 6, anything can happen. I mean, maybe your child's not talking now, but they may make great strides and leaps and bounds, and we'll be talking a little bit later, or, you know, it doesn't mean they don't have the ability to learn. They may start doing amazing things. But if the child is not talking now, this is the age where a child should be talking. And if you notice that problem, act on it right now, please. Start with going to your pediatrician, getting your child looked at, and getting a referral for a pediatric developmental psychiatrist or psychologist, so that your child will be able to be tested. It all starts there. You want to contact your county or your state's early childhood intervention program. You can also check with the school system to see what the recommendations are, what the phone numbers are, or maybe your doctor even has it. But early childhood intervention is key to getting these children on track. Your child may not even have autism, but if you don't go and get the child tested, if you don't find out what the deficits are, if you don't act now, I'm not going to say that it's going to be too late, but you could have probably gotten ahead of the game if you got it done, you know, as soon as possible. And the reason is because with early childhood intervention, if your child qualifies, you will be able to get services in your home, and speech therapy, occupational therapy, nutritional services, any type of service that your child is needing. Early childhood intervention intervenes, and they provide that service so that your child will be able to kind of ramp it up. And by the age of 3, if you find that there are still some deficits, that is when it is so important that your child is eligible to be enrolled in regular public school. And you want your child to be enrolled in regular public school. So if your daughter is 2.5 now, she has 6 months before she's eligible for regular public school, but getting her tested and getting those services started early is key, because this is an age when children will absorb the absolute 100% most information. And if she's able to start school by the age of 3, she's getting a jump start before those kindergartners that are actually going to be starting at age 5. So if there's any social issues, anything of that nature, try to get those things taken care of now. Do everything in your power. I totally get your being afraid going to get a diagnosis that you don't want to hear. But it's better to get that diagnosis now, if that's what it is, than to wait. Because if you wait too long, you will have lost time. And time is the most important thing in these situations, because, you know, you want to take advantage of every moment that your child could be learning and could be gaining some knowledge or getting the skills that that child needs in order to be successful in society. So, pediatrician, check out early childhood intervention. Definitely get your child tested, and if eligible, start them in, the regular public school system at age 3 because they will be eligible if they meet the criteria through early childhood intervention. Another thing I mentioned in my first video that I did was I put my child in preschool because I wanted to make sure that, you know, it wasn't because he wasn't around other children. Being around other children sometimes will, you know, give them that exposure so that they're able to start maybe talking or interacting or just kind of doing more than what they're doing now. But, you know, definitely pediatrician, please, and get that early childhood intervention and keep me posted on how things are going, okay? Okay, so my next question comes from Pennsauken, New Jersey. And this one's a little lengthy, so it's probably going to be my last one for today because it has multiple questions combined in it. So it reads, how can autism parents avoid devastating and traumatic events of having well-intended bystanders request CPS intervention for an autistic child who is perceived as being abused due to autism-induced behaviors? The second part says, are behaviors gender-specific? The third part says, what can autism parents do to stop this? Would they have to make certain declarations with authorities that when they hear this, when they hear the child's medical condition, that it can explain their behavior? And the last part of the question says, are authorities legally bound to cease the actions? Okay, so this is an excellent question, and we're going to start from the very beginning. Now, again, it reads, how can autism parents avoid devastating and traumatic events of having well-intended bystanders request CPS intervention for an autistic child who is perceived as being abused due to autism-induced behavior? Okay, so this is important because when a child with autism is behavioral, bystanders may see this child acting out, and when a parent is trying to control this child, it may appear that the child is being abused. But the actuality, the child is not being abused. They're just trying to be controlled so that they won't go out, you know, doing something, you know, crazy, like hitting someone else or banging on things and doing things. Yeah, I can see very clearly how someone would easily contact CPS. And this is a situation where if an adult or anyone suspects child abuse, the likelihood is they will contact CPS. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And the reason that's not a bad thing is because if your child is really being abused, you would want someone to contact CPS. But what I would do to prevent any of this from happening is I would alert the authorities, okay? Your local authorities, the ones that will typically, you know, come to the home if they're called. I would let them know, okay, hey, my child has autism. Let them know your address, give them a picture of your child so they know what they look like. And they will be on the lookout. You know, they will at least be aware because bystanders don't know. They don't know what's going on. And I will give you a specific example. When my son was acting out one year and he was screaming and screaming and sounding like someone was killing him when, you know, it was really just all him. But someone called the cops. They were just like, I guess it was a couple. It was just like kind of walking down the street and they were like, you know, what's going on in that house? So my son was acting out and the cops showed up. So they were concerned because, you know, there was a call from a, you know, community person in the community, and my son was acting out. So I explained to the officer, oh, my son has autism, he has behavioral challenges, and he was just kind of, you know, having a meltdown. And I made him aware, and he talked to my son. He came over to my son, hey buddy, you know, talking to him and asked him if he was okay and all this other stuff. And at that time, my son was able to talk. So he was really fascinated with police cars and flashing lights. So he was like really excited the cop was there. But the reality was this person or people who were walking down the street, they thought my son was being abused and they did call. So I wasn't offended by that, but you know, I mean, because people don't know. When you hear something like that, it's alarming because it's not the norm. So, I mean, you can't really avoid or prevent anyone from calling. Other than, you know, again, letting your local authorities know and let your neighbors know. If you have neighbors that are nearby or that you see walking down the street on a regular basis, I would kind of just bring it to their attention. Hey, if you happen to hear this happening, it's not anything going on. It's just, my son has some behavioral challenges and sometimes he'll act this way or that way. So at least people will be aware. But when they're not aware, they will call. And if they call, hey, okay, you just explain, but make sure that you have your information on file with the precinct so that when the officer or whoever comes by, because they will send someone by, you will definitely want to be able to let them know what's going on. And in that particular situation, my son was so fascinated with the police car by the officer, he let him go outside and watch the flashing lights and press some buttons in the car and gave him a little sheriff badge. And oh my God, that was the highlight of his day, even though his behavior was off the chain. But, at least someone did call because there was a concern. And we got it all taken care of. Everything was under control. He was totally fine after that. He was like in heaven. He was like so excited about having his badge and all this. But, yeah, I think that that's a good question, because when you have a behavioral child who is acting out, and especially if the child does not appear to have a disability, they didn't even see my child, but, you just never know. So, yeah. And another thing is you want to have a high index of suspicion, because it's good when a person has a high index of suspicion. An autistic child who reports abuse, you want that child to be able to be heard. If a child says that someone has done something to them, it's definitely worth looking into. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. I have a totally separate topic about that, but, that is important because, if a child voices that they were hurt by someone or someone did something to them and they're verbal and able to speak, it should be looked into, because that's usually not how an autistic child is wired. They don't just make things up randomly just to get people in trouble, so it's definitely worth looking into. So the next question in this series of questions reads, are behaviors gender specific? Now, autism is more common in boys, and the majority of the studies that are done on boys. Boys have behaviors. Not all of them, but a lot of autistic boys do have behavior, and there are many that do not. Now, when we compare it to girls, I don't know if there's a large enough sample out there where studies have been done on girls to say that it's gender specific towards boys versus girls, but I have observed girls that have autism with behavior challenges, who bite, who spit, bang on things, try to break things, pull hair, screaming, all kinds of things. So yes, girls do have behavior and boys have behavior. However, I don't believe that there's a sample out there wide enough to determine whether it's a gender specific behavior, whether boys or girls have behavior problems more than the other. So the next part of the question was already pretty much explained in the first part of the question, which was, what can autism parents do to stop this? Would they have to make some sort of declaration with authorities? And when the authorities heard the child's diagnosis, medical condition, this would explain the behavior. So yes, I would definitely, again, like I said, make sure you reach out to the authorities. If you have a child with autism with behavior challenges, make sure that they are aware, because if you get a phone call, or if someone comes to your house unexpectedly with, the cops or something like that, they will know that your child has autism and will be aware. So I would definitely make sure that, someone is aware. The question is, are authorities legally bound to cease the action? Well, that depends. It may depend on the state the person lives in. Now, for me, where I am, pretty much you have a choice, okay? If your child is acting out, they will ask you, do you, feel like you want your child to go to the hospital to be evaluated? Do you feel like your child is safe? Is this something that you can manage? If you can manage it, if you feel like you're safe, if you feel like this is okay, this is the norm for my family, we're used to this, they give you that option. If you feel like the situation is not safe and your child may need to be in the hospital or needs to go and get calmed down, may need some chemical like medication or something like that, then you have that option to have your child transported to the hospital to get that all under control. Whereas, other states may have different views or rules and regulations about this type of, scenario. So I would say that it really depends on the state. because for an authority to be legally bound to do something, I mean, they're not legally bound where I live, but they may be legally bound somewhere else. So I would have to say that would really depend on where the person lives. So that's going to wrap up the questions for today. We still have so many questions to get through. I might even just do another series next week. But this was a pretty long question, so I didn't want this video to get too long, but I did want to start answering some of these questions for you because I really appreciate them, guys. And we are going to wrap everything up. So again, I have multiple videos out so far. I would like for you to please take a look at some of them, especially if it's ones that will help you to kind of reinforce things that I've said previously. You can check those videos out. There's a few of them listed here. And make sure that you subscribe also, because I would like to have your support and know that you enjoy my videos. So until next time, guys, thank you for watching. Peace.